If you're running a business today, it can feel like you're navigating a total storm, right? One minute there's a new regulation, the next a global trade dispute. It can feel like pure chaos.
So, that leads to a really big question. With all this uncertainty swirling around, how does any organization even begin to make a plan for the future? I mean, how do you chart a course when the map itself seems to be rewriting itself every single day?
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. The forces hitting companies from the outside are just relentless. You've got new government rules, global trade disputes, consumer trends that change on a dime, massive tech breakthroughs, not to mention climate events and economic volatility. It is a lot to keep track of.
But what if I told you there's a way to actually make sense of all that noise? A tool that works kind of like a strategic lens, helping you bring all these external forces into sharp focus. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
This tool is called a PESTEL analysis, and at its core, it's a strategic framework that companies use to look at all the big external factors, the stuff outside their control that could affect their business. The whole idea is to spot opportunities and dodge potential threats before they become big problems.
So, that name, PESTEL, it's actually an acronym, which makes it super easy to remember. It stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. So, let's break down what each of those really means.
All right, first up is the P, and that stands for political. This is all about how decisions made by governments can create these huge ripple effects that directly hit a company's strategy and, of course, its bottom line.
And you got to understand, these political factors can be a massive deal for any company. We're talking about things like government policies, tax regulations, trade restrictions and tariffs, and just the overall political stability of a country. Seriously, one single change in policy can totally reshape an entire industry.
Let's look at a real-world example to see how this plays out. Take Reliance Industries in India. The government's policy continuity gave them the confidence to pour huge amounts of money into long-term projects, like their refining capacity. And then you have government initiatives like Digital India that directly fuel the explosive growth of their telecom arm, Jio.
Okay, so that's political. Next up in PESTEL is E for economic, because government policy is one piece of the puzzle, but the overall financial health of a market, that's just as critical, if not more so.
When we talk about economic factors, we're really looking at the big picture financial trends. Things like, is the economy growing, or is it in a downturn? What are interest rates doing? What about inflation or exchange rates? These numbers might seem abstract, but they have a direct impact on a company's costs, its prices, and how much people are willing to spend.
And here's how that connection works in practice. For a company like Reliance, India's strong GDP growth, we're talking around 7 to 7.5%, means more people have more money in their pockets. And what does that lead to? Stronger consumer demand and higher retail sales. On top of that, moderate interest rates mean it's actually cheaper for them to borrow the massive amounts of cash they need for their big projects. All right, so we've got political and economic. The next piece of our puzzle is S for social. And this is where we shift our focus away from governments and markets and zoom in on people, their culture, their habits, their beliefs, and how they live their lives. So social factors cover all those important shifts in society. Think about things like cultural norms, population growth, and age distribution, or new lifestyle trends, or how people's attitudes are changing around things like health and well-being. These might seem like soft factors, but trust me, their impact can be absolutely huge.
And the key here is seeing how these social shifts create massive opportunities. In India, for example, you have this incredibly young population. The median age is around 28, and they're hungry for data and digital content. That's a dream market for a company like Jio. At the same time, the explosion of digital payments, we're talking more than 80 billion UPI transactions in 2023 alone, that just swings the door wide open for their financial services business.
All right, let's move on to T for technological. And in today's world, this one is, well, it's changing at lightning speed.
And when we say technology, we mean way more than just the latest smartphones. We're talking about fundamental, game-changing shifts, like the rise of AI and automation. We're talking about new infrastructure, like 5G and the Internet of Things. And of course, the ever-present issue of cybersecurity. For any business out there, keeping up isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential. And you can see the very real, tangible benefits of this. By embracing 5G and edge computing, Reliance can offer its business customers super-fast applications with almost no lag time.
And by using AI and machine learning in their supply chain, they can cut unplanned downtime by a whopping 15 to 25%. That's technology translating directly into dollars and cents. Okay, next up we have L for legal. This is all about the specific rules of the game that every business has to play by. We're talking about all the laws and regulations that literally define the landscape they operate in.
So what does that include? Well, it's a whole range of things. You've got employment and labor laws, consumer protection laws. Then there are industry-specific regulations, which can be super complex. Plus all the licenses and permits you need just to open your doors, and of course, laws protecting intellectual property. Navigating this legal maze isn't just about avoiding fines, it's fundamental to being able to do business at all.
And that brings us to the final letter in our PESTEL framework, the second E, which stands for environmental. And this is a factor that, in recent years, has moved right to the center of business strategy. This really covers a huge range of issues. We're talking about the direct impacts of climate change, a company's carbon footprint, where they source their materials from, all the way to things like stewardship of natural resources, and even the risk of extreme weather events disrupting operations. It's a massive area of concern and opportunity.
So, there you have it. We've broken down each piece of the PESTEL framework. But the real magic happens when you put it all together. What does that actually look like in the real world?
Well, how about this number? Over 400 million. That's how many mobile subscribers Reliance Jio has. And it didn't just get there by accident. It was the direct result of understanding the whole picture. The political support for going digital, the economic realities of their customers, and the social hunger for data. That, right there, is the power of PESTEL thinking in action.
And look, this isn't just about one company and one country. Think about a global player like Tesla. This quote here says it all. They have a global outreach and are subject to a whole variety of legal, political, and regulatory requirements, as well as social and economic conditions that they have very little control over. It just goes to show any big business is caught in this web of external forces. The only way to succeed is to understand them first.
So, at the end of the day, PESTEL isn't just some abstract buzzword you hear in business school. It's a really practical tool, a new strategic lens you can use to see the world around you a whole lot more clearly.
Now, of course, no tool is perfect, right? PESTEL has its pros and cons. On the plus side, it's pretty simple to use. It really forces you to think strategically, and it helps you spot opportunities and threats. But on the downside, it can sometimes oversimplify really complex situations, and in a world that changes so fast, there's always a risk that your analysis could be out of date almost as soon as you're done writing it.
So, there it is, a really powerful framework for making a bit of sense out of the chaos. And that leaves us with one final, big question to think about. A question for you. Whether you're thinking about your industry, your company, or even just your own career, what are the unseen forces shaping your world right now?